Welcome to a video on Mars and Gemini going retrograde on October 30th. I'm going to bring up a couple dates, pointers, tips. I can go on, and should I go on in this video? Because really what Mars and Gemini is all about is the action and the instinct to do as many things in your brain as possible, juggling them. But it's going to go retrograde, which means review. How many things do I say to you? Would it stick in your mind? Am I going to even remember anything I say? Well, let's stop. Start over and say, I'm going to do a couple different things for you here and just give you an example in this beginning of this video of how and what could happen to your mind and your reasoning and logic with a transit like this. So stick with me, have a little fun, and we'll get clear on all of this. I'll put up a chart here, and this is October 30th, and here is where Mars in Gemini is at 25 degrees, stopping and about to go backwards all the way to January 12th when it stations and starts to move forward again. This transit of Mars and Gemini actually started on October 19th. It isn't going to end until mid-March. I'm going to say actually the 25th of March. 7 months of Mars being in the sign of Gemini. Woo! That's a lot right there. And then the big part of the retrograde cycle here. So here we are. Now I want you to get something straight here, okay? I want you to understand something. Okay, keywords. Mars. In astrology and your chart is where one takes action. It's instinct, it's power, it's the direction of power, it's the determination of that power. It's go, get, do now. Mars. Bursts through the door. It also cuts and severs in a more older way of thinking. It separates. Okay, it has branded as a malefic in old school astrology. It can bring harshness. It's caustic, it's raw. Now, we need Mars to do things and to take action in our life and to show our will. And Mars, now we'll get to the Gemini part here, is in the sign of Gemini, an air sign. It's mutable, which can go from here to there. It's about I think, and it's of the mind, ideas, thoughts, and how you process them, the dexterity of that. And here are some key big words. It's your reasoning and logic and how those processes start from one place and get to another. And not only that, the questions and the inquisitiveness of the brain and what it does. So if you have Mars taking action there and wanting to get its will done, and it's happening in the sign of Gemini, you could see now how there's a lot of mind power here. At the same time, how the mind can get overwhelmed with too many things, too many thoughts, too many things started. Key thing here. Remember, Mars likes the finish line. And what I mean by this quote-unquote finish line, it's goal-oriented in the end, and it functions well with that. And if you can remember and write down what the goal is or what the finish line is, and here's a helper for you, you just look to the Gemini part of your chart for that. You remember that when you get completely whacked and scattered during this retrograde, you can go back to that place to remind you and to keep you singularly focused on one thing to get you through this transit. Now, I just wanted to give you some key words there. I'll go back to this chart. Here's Mars and Gemini. What we also should know here is that we are looking to the ruler of Gemini, which is the planet Mercury. And here at this point, Mercury just entered the sign of Scorpio the day before on the 29th. It will be ruling this temporarily until it goes into another sign. And as a matter of fact, during this retrograde, Mars in Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury will have gone through 3 signs. It's going to go through Scorpio, Sagittarius, and then it's going to go into Capricorn, where it goes retrograde. Mercury in Capricorn retrograde. You have to know this if you want to understand the waves of thought and the ways of maneuvering through something like this. It's going to be changing. Of course it's going to change because it's Gemini and it's mutable and it does this. But key thing, you have to remember, it's going to go through 3 signs. Mercury in Scorpio, Mercury in Sagittarius, Mercury in Capricorn going retrograde. Key thing to remember. The other thing is 2 heavy hitters in the zodiac that are involved in this retrograde. And here's the big one. Here is Neptune in Pisces, a mutable sign too, and it's making a 90-degree angle with Mars in Gemini. It is called a square. Neptune, what it does is dissolves boundaries. It dissolves anything that it touches. It penetrates it and separates. No boundaries. Fog, illusion, dream world. There's a creativeness in the dream world. We'll get to that in a second. But Neptune is all about fantasy and illusions. And it's throwing its illusion and veil on this Mars and Gemini retrograde little story going on here. So if we at the beginning here, I told you about what happens with the mind and reasoning and logic, and Mars wanting to do multiple things fast because Gemini wants to move fast. And here is where this illusion of Neptune can bring frustration and erraticness and a wildness. I also think there's this restlessness involved in wanting to push things when things aren't clear. And this brings truth and untruth involved. So, the impatience here with Mars and Gemini with this illusionary part of Neptune can completely throw things out of whack and will do that in the Gemini part of your chart. If you're a Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, you're affected by this transit also, especially between the degrees of 25 to all the way from 8 degrees to 25, you're going to be affected by this, which is huge. And it's the reason why I'm calling this video Mind Riot, because this is what's going to happen. What's real, what's not. The fog of thought, the fog of reasoning, the fog of your mind, and feeling like you're doing a bunch of things, and then Neptune throwing this illusion on there, and you haven't even moved or gone anywhere. You're going to think you have in your mind, but nothing has got done. You start one thing, you start two things, you start three things. They get scattered. I'm saying this way, and I'm trying to get this into your brain right now when you watch this, that in the end, Mars's energy, when it gets scattered, is a no-no. And so Neptune's going to throw the scatteredness on there. So you've been warned. You've been, and you see what's going on here. In the beginning of this transit, this Mercury in Scorpio that deals with secrets and things that are a little bit more hidden in the communication of them, but a directness too that Scorpio does, because it does bring the truth, are clear things. You have to differentiate this kind of thing. If I were to bring up another chart here, I want to show you. This is November 19th, okay? Now, Mars here is now at 22 degrees. It's still going backwards. Here's Neptune at 22. Now, mathematically, we have the second Neptune-Mars square that's happening this week. The first one happened October 12th, so this is chapter 2. Now, I'm just going to look at Mars in Gemini. I'm like, okay, where's Mercury now? At this point, Mercury is now in the sign of Sagittarius. It left Scorpio, so things are opening up. There's a huge horizon of thought, the expansiveness of Sagittarius. It's on a quest for the truth, higher knowledge, philosophizing, looking at other people's truths, debating of those truths. And that is now the ruler of this Mars in Gemini. And it being squared tightly this whole week, with Neptune throwing its illusion, you could see how things have completely blown out in someone's brain here, okay? Throwing this Mercury and Sagittarius element involved in there. You just so you happen to see, there's Mercury conjunct Venus in Sagittarius, so relationships and what, how people might be saying I do when they shouldn't say I do. There's that, but I think more here, let's just keep it on what's happening here in the Gemini part of your chart, that it's heavily influenced by Neptune. Now, I'm showing you a chart here that's the 19th, okay? I'm showing you the 19th. So it's like, okay, but what's this help that you're talking about? Now, on the 28th, and we could just go there. I'll just skip over to 28th here and switch over the chart here, okay? On the 28th, here is Saturn at 19 degrees in Aquarius and air sign, and here is Mars it's in Gemini 19 degrees. This is a trine, a harmonious relationship. Neptune still has its influence on Mars, but Saturn, the key player in this story, is your place and pillar and foundation to go to keep things clear, to move through the fog and look for the boundaries and container that you can put your mind into. And that's where Saturn and Aquarius just flows. I did a video. I'll put it up here on Saturn and Aquarius transit. It's going to be there and finally leaves March 7th. Take advantage of this relationship between Mars and Saturn in your chart. You just have to look at the Gemini part of your chart and look at the Aquarius part of your chart, and that's your go-to place to work through this fog and illusion of Neptune where it throws confusion in the thought. And let me say things. Overdoing, overthinking, I don't know how many different ways I can put this. Too quick, sarcastic comments. You have to be careful with this Mars and Gemini transit because, and I could see that happening with Mercury in Sagittarius, who's already sarcastic in general and already bloats the word. So you have to be careful of what you say to yourself and to your mind and pick out what's real and what's not. And when you pick out what's real, use Saturn to do it, okay? And that's one of my other tips here. I also want to bring up, there's a lot of other things. On the 1219, I wrote 1219. Yeah, we're just going to show this to you. It's one of these videos. I'm not going to do an all-sign video. I'm just going to go to 1219 here and show you something. Because it goes to a lot of videos that I've did this year. Here's now Mars at 12 degrees. And it's making a great relationship with Chiron and Aries. Now, if you've been watching my videos on Chiron and Aries, and how I mention this, it's a big deal here and part of the healing process in the Aries part of your chart. You can use the dexterity of Mars and Gemini here. Now, it's not going to be flowing the way you like it to, but it's a little farther away from this Neptune and Pisces now, so it's got a little bit more clarity. It's already had some lessons learned, and you're using Saturn with all this, and you want to use that clarity and the sifting and the preciseness to this Chiron and Aries, to the Aries part of your chart. If you're in Aries, Aries rising, have planets in Aries, use this. It's a huge part of the year for you. You want to use this and get things straight, because if you think about things in a goal-oriented way, or the finish line that I'm talking about, you Chiron and Aries people, or your Aries people, this Mars and Gemini transit is there for you, and it's going to be there for you again later down the line when it hits this 12 degree or 11 degree. That's another video. I just wanted to point that out. I don't want to leave that hanging. That's the December 19th. I already talked about the 19th. I want to say something here. I don't want to let this go. The process in your mind can make you and trip out your nervous system. So if you are having problems with mental health, please go see the right people. Please bring in the right tools for yourself to ground your brain, to take you out of the scatteredness and the run-on sentence completely going on, and to help you figure out what is real. We have these things we do to ourselves, how we project things on how we look at ourselves, and we turn a story that isn't real into like supposedly who we are. And I think in a transit like this is under review. And you have a situation here where they can get completely thrown off course. At the same time, you can really apply reevaluation and review techniques when it comes to the subject matter about your mind and what happens. And this is a big reason why this retrograde, the gift of this retrograde in my mind of what this is. And to keep things focused and regulated, bring in the tools, find the people that you can talk to, find professionals who can help you. And I'm not just talking about me, an astrologer. I'm talking about trained people that can help you with challenges that happen. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but considering what we've been through the last 3 or 4 years with COVID, and then computers and technology and misinformation and what's real or what's not, there's been a huge severing of like basis and a place for one to deal with their logic in a rational manner. And you throw in technology of swiping and scrolling and what does chemically in your brain. You throw some beers in you, or you're popping pills, or you're doing all sorts whatever to your body. I'm not trying to judge anybody, but you could see how one can already find themselves in a hard, scattered place with their body and their mind. And what you do with your mind affects everything else. And your nervous system comes out of your C1 and your atlas and moves to every other part of your body. So everything's interconnected here. I'm not a doctor. I'm not prescribing anything. But I'm showing you another way of how this can be, this effect of this transit, what it can do, especially if you're a Gemini, especially if your Mercury's heavy in your chart. And you also have to look to the Mars rule places in your chart, the Aries and Scorpio parts of your chart. This, you can be affected there too. There's my little side rant. I just wanted to say that. I'll put up another chart here. I don't want to do too much on the charts. I just, because it's just too much information. That's my whole point here. It's too much information. I think you're going to, see all of this here. Okay. So I'm going to throw this chart up, and this is January 12th, 2023. This is the day that Mars stops going retrograde. Here it is at 8 degrees. It goes all the way back to 8 degrees. And it starts to get to move forward again. At this point, we go look to see what planet's ruling the Mars, and it's Mercury in Capricorn, currently retrograde. So there's reevaluation happening in the mind at a whole nother level. You could see now how this transit can become very difficult and very scattered. This retrograde in Capricorn is going to really want foundations to be reevaluated, really need pillars to stand by. Mercury in Capricorn going retrograde is ruled, thankfully, by the Saturn in Aquarius. It's our pillar and go-to and healing place and all this that I keep referring to. Eventually, this Mars in Gemini is going to leave on March 25th. Along the way, on March 14th, it has another square with Neptune. So much, so wild. Too many things. Too many things. What to do with too many things? What to do with direction lost? Wanting to just take a break from your brain? We want to look to the creativeness as us as human beings. The way you use this Mars-Neptune square is you find a way to be creative and to corral the thoughts, and to, even if you let yourself go and say, I need to take a break with my brain, in that place you don't have to do anything, but you can let things come to you organically and naturally. And I'm going to show you a way. You see me? I'm going to do 2 breaths through my nose and nostrils and breathe it out of my mouth like this. Or I'm breathing from my first and second chakras and using my diaphragm when I do this. Then to my chest, out of my mouth. The first time I did 2 breaths like this. Whatever the breathing techniques you have and use, and if you get to the end of this video, put them down in the comments, because other people are going to be reading and they're going to need it, just like I'm going to need it. Those are the 2 breathing techniques I'm using to clear my brain, to calm my nervous system, my parasympathetic nervous system down. You're going to need this. This almost seems like a joke, doesn't it? But I'm not joking. I'm not joking at all. We want to clear the brain. We want to clear our nervous system. And that is where creativity comes through. That's where calmness comes through. And that's where focus is seated. I love you guys. Trust me on this one. And I'll see you on the next video.